Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. I'm back to you again with another podcast. It's good to talk, and sure, it's good to talk. And most important, if you're at a stand-up comedy show, it's good to listen because you just mightn't get the punchline. I got into podcasting because of my book that I produced, my friend Stoney McGurn. And that's how it all started. People do ask me, is he alive? He is alive. In 41, that means he's 84 years old. My sponsors are Liffey Van Lines, moving company here in New York City, named after the river in Dublin, the River Liffey. And when it comes to moving, let Liffey do the lifting. Professional, you can't buy experience. I always give a shout out to Paddy McCarthy of the Irish Examiner in USA. It's a newspaper here, probably the best newspaper in all of the United States of America for events and music, especially music events. Paddy did a great piece on the Saw Doctors, a band from Ireland. Songs like The Galway Girl, the N17, that was fantastic. But every week, I like myself, every week Paddy has something different in the paper and touching on events overseas and in Ireland and here in New York. I always have an interesting guest on. I vary my guests. I don't do all real estate. I don't do all financial shit. I don't do all medical stuff, but I have had doctors and scientists and everyone. But sometimes I like to switch it up. Today, my guest is a stand-up comedian. I don't know why he stands up. He should sit down really and enjoy himself and relax. His name is Eric Piesco, if I got his name right. And Eric, I want to invite you to my podcast. It's good to talk. Tell my audience about you. Where were you born? How did you become a comedian?
I'm from New York, born in the Bronx, lived all over the New York area, spent most of my formative years here in Manhattan, and I got into stand-up comedy. To be honest, I don't do it full-time. And I haven't been in a bit of a, I guess you call it lull lately. I haven't been performing as much. I got into it kind of on a lark a bunch of years ago. A friend of mine, this couple that I'm good friends with, they would always tell me I should do stand-up comedy. And I was the funny guy in the crowd, but I thought, I don't know if I could do stand-up. So on the lark, the woman in this couple, they just had a baby, and she said, let's take this stand-up comedy class at the Learning Annex. And it was 3 classes, and at the end, we got to do a show at a stand-up, a club on the West Side, and none of the people were invited back except for me and my friend. Were invited back a couple of times, and we did a bunch of shows. And then I met a few other people, and got involved with a group, and I did a lot of shows through the 2000s and the I guess the aughts they call it, and then the 2010s, and then the pandemic hit, and that kind of changed things a little bit. And since then, I've been doing some shows, but haven't been performing as much. But I want to get back into it because this year is the 20th anniversary, September of 2005. I had testicular cancer. And that gave my comedy career a bit of a boom because, tragedy and time, they say, is comedy. I think you even said that to me once, the old quote. And it was true. I didn't take much time. I immediately started talking about my testicular cancer on stage, and pretty much anything that happens in my life becomes my comedy.
I quite like that. There's another American guy like yourself. He forms in Dublin. I forget his name right now. You actually told me his name.
Yeah, Des Bishop.
Des Bishop makes fun of his own difficulty with having one of his testicles removed. Okay, but it's good to be able to make fun of even a sad situation or a tragic situation, indeed, which is difficult at times.
Well, I won't call it quite tragic. I mean, I was okay. I had some minor radiation. I didn't even come close to dying, but I did get a good poem out of it. I have a poem I call my Ode to Lefty that
I like that.
I performed. And one of my friends, it's funny, who also is a performer, is convinced to this day that I never had testicular cancer, that I just had one of my balls removed so that I could make jokes about it on stage. But as much as I love my craft, I don't think I'd go that far.
Yeah. I mean, I've come across women that tell me that it's all they brag about, that men say they have balls, and then they say they have a pussy. And pussy is more important than balls because you can't beat that, That's the strength of a woman, I suppose, in terms of that, in that whole political world of saying a woman can have bigger balls than a man, but metaphorically speaking. Anyways, let's get to you. You look good. You're healthy to me, anyway, from a distance, because we're on a computer to computer. If I was your doctor, I would say you look very healthy.
Well, thank you.
Well, come on. It's like throwing bouquets.
Do you take my insurance? Maybe I'll get you as my doctor.
It's like that old saying, you might like to walk in my shoes and I might like to walk in your shoes, but your shoes are doing okay? So don't worry, you might walk in my shoes and think, oh, these don't fit right. Anyways, let's continue with our discussion now, and it's good to talk. Eric, I'm happy to have you as a guest today because my last guest was the theologian, but he was actually quite humorous as well. And we got into some humorous stuff on theology. And people, my friends say I amaze them because I know shit all about theology, I know shit all about comedy, and yet it seems I know a little bit about everything. So I'm like, a little bit here, there. I've a long way to go. I've a lot to learn. Jimmy Grady will sing a song for us shortly, and Jimmy's only 14. And someone put up a bad comment on after a podcast and asked, was Jimmy my grandson? He's 14 years old. So I didn't know, and I replied, I wish he was, because if he was my grandson, he'd be more intelligent than the idiot that put in the comment. Anyways, Jimmy will sing a song for us shortly. So, Eric, in terms of performing, you're on stage. It's stand-up, obviously. Do you interact? Do you have a prop? Do you interact with the audience? What's your gig like?
I don't always interact with the audience. Sometimes the situation presents itself and you kind of have no choice. I don't like to insult the audience because they're paying to see me, unless it's good natured, unless they're like talking during the show. I try not to interact, but sometimes the reactions I get, it's appropriate to interact a little bit.
Okay.
And I don't bring props. I usually like to walk this stage with a whiskey in my hand. And although I did a show a couple of years ago at an NA convention, and that's not considered appropriate to walk with a whiskey in your hands at a Narcotics Anonymous convention for some reason. I don't know. The tight ass is there.
So how do you introduce yourself? I'm Eric. I'm an alcoholic.
Well, no, I didn't, claim to be an alcoholic, but I did make the silly joke because NA people hug each other a lot. And usually a lot of shows, there's a two drink minimum. So I said, usually there's a 2 drink minimum in most of my shows, but I guess in this one there's a 2 hug minimum.
Wow.
So we used to do a show.
I should join AA. I could do with a few hugs then. Yeah.
I used to do a show at Sloan Kettering Hospital. It ended about 10 years ago. And the guy who ran the show always said to the crowd, it was for patients. And he said, there's a 2 IV minimum here. And a lot of people had a lot more than 2 IVs. It was kind of funny, but not funny at the same time.
I had a scientist on my show. He is a brain scientist. We had fun as well. So he was there. And I guess the whole scientific thing flew over my head, pardon the pun. And he's brain cancer research. And then I said, okay, I'm going to say, at the end of the day, what do you do? What do you like to do? I look at my guests like you have a clock behind you on the wall. He had a guitar. What do you like to sing? And he said, yeah, I like to do karaoke. I said, okay, sing a song for me. And he did a song, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by Bono. He's a scientist. I said, hurry to fuck up and find what you're fucking looking for. Get a cure for fucking cancer, man, and forget the music and the singing. Anyways, Eric, in your stand-up comedian, we did discuss, you don't pick on the audience. So do you use any other props, or do you pace back and over the stage?
I I pace a little bit. I do sometimes, like I said, if people in the crowd are acting inappropriately, talking too much, I will sometimes single them out. But I try not to do that generally, unless the people really deserve it. And if I go on 4th or 5th, and they've been doing that to other comics also, then I'll do that.
Well, you really got me there now on that one, because if you're looking at your audience and if they're on their phone, texting, and you're trying to tell a joke, okay, and that's not easy. Do you make a joke and say, who's calling you? Your ex-wife, your ex-girlfriend? Do you put them on a spot?
I sometimes do. Like I said, I try not to do that. I try to focus on the people that are actually paying attention. There was one time, though, I got involved with the crowd and I got handed an opportunity. I was doing a show near Times Square years ago, and there were people who were getting people off the street. And there was this tourist, this beautiful woman with her teenage son, and they were visiting. Other comics had spoken to them, and they were visiting from Norway. And the woman looked to be about 40, but she was stunning.
Was she cold?
I'm sorry?
Was she cold?
Not that I could notice from her shirt, but she was like very pretty woman, and her son appeared to be about 15 or 16. So a bunch of the comics were noticing them and talking to them. So I had kind of planned something, so it seemed spontaneous, but then I was fed a line, and what I did say was spontaneous. In the middle of my set, I then asked the boy, I said, how do you say MILF in Norwegian? Are you familiar with the term MILF?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I've
And
had a few.
he said, well, it's the same in Norwegian. And the mother looked confused, like she had never heard the term. And I said to the boy, I said, now you're going to have to tell your mother what a MILF is. And he looked horrified, and the butt laughed, and the crowd laughed. And I don't like to put people on the spot like that, but I couldn't miss that opportunity.
I remember one time I was, I think, down in Miami in Florida. I'm not a fan of drag shows or drag queens or drag, but I ended up at a drag show, and they picked me out of the audience, to make fun of my accent. I kind of looked up as a drag queen. Hey, I do speak funny. I'm from Ireland. We have a lot of different accents, and you're using me to fill in a gap in your show. I don't need to wear a wig. I don't need to. I know what I am. I'm a man. I'm not a woman. I don't need to, put on a false bra or anything like that. But it totally put me off the drag queen thing or the drag shows. And I don't mean that to insult any drag queens that are listening. And believe me, I have a huge following. I mean, I have a huge following. Everybody listens to my show, drag queens included. But I think sometimes when you pick someone out of the audience, you're kind of at a low ebb. If you don't have enough material yourself, you shouldn't abuse somebody from the audience. It resonated with me, and it's very difficult to insult me. By the way, I've thicker skin than Donald Trump. Believe me.
There's a thin line between like abusing the audience. And in this case, a lot of the people with, like I mentioned, the Norwegian mother and son who were there. And I think for the most part, they enjoyed it. Most of it was good natured, and they were like visiting New York, and they were like talked about.
That's different.
As long as it doesn't get nasty. There's, like I said, a thin line, and you don't want to go over that line.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to call on Jimmy to sing a song for us.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste the moonshine, teardrops in my eyes, country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country roads. All my memories gather round her, miner's lady, stranger to blue water, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste the moonshine, teardrops in my eyes, country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country roads. I hear her voice in the morning hour, she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. Yesterday, country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country roads, country roads, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home.
Okay, Eric, I'm back to you. Jimmy, thank you very much. Anyways, Eric, let's talk about other parts of your comedy, like punchlines. Like you have to like writing a book, like the book I wrote for my friend.
I'm sorry?
There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when the punchline, when your audience doesn't get the punchline, do you like die on the stage?
I don't know. That's never happened to me. No, I'm just,
Good.
just kidding. Of course it has. Sometimes when I was new on comedy, when I was newly performing, that would totally throw me off if they didn't get a punchline. And at this point, I could usually play it off by making a joke about that, or I just move on to the next joke. So it doesn't, like I said, it would bother me in the past. Now, if it doesn't bother me, I figure sometimes it's my own fault that, I didn't perform it as well. And sometimes you just have a crowd that doesn't like every punchline and you just roll with it.
Yeah, but I'm with you on that one because number one, what you do is not easy. It's difficult. It's like some people have a difficulty in speaking in public. Easy for me because I do it naturally. And I'm like Donald Trump again. I would rather have an audience of 20,000 than just you and me, you and I, sorry. So the bigger the crowd, the better I get, I think. But the punchline thing is you assume that they are suffering from like delayed reaction.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes I'll wait, and then sometimes I'll wait and they don't get it, and then I'll just move on. Or it depends on, sometimes you might make a joke about the punchline failing. Like if you ever watched Johnny Carson back in the day, he was one of the best at failing at a joke. And I have another comedian friend of mine who's great. When a joke doesn't work, he'd make a face and act like you didn't laugh. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I've developed that skill to some extent, I think. But now Johnny was the master at that. But what you said, though, speaking of punchlines not working, I did a show once at the Broadway Comedy Club, which is not on Broadway. It's actually on 52nd Street, just off 8th Avenue. But I did the show, and they were also pulling people off the street, like I mentioned in the show earlier. And I knew I was on my game that night. I made a bunch of good jokes. It was a full house, and about 6 or 7 people in the crowd were laughing. And I realized they had pulled in a bunch of German tourists who speak some English, but they weren't getting like rapid fire jokes. So they were just looking blank, but they could tell everybody in Germany they went to a comedy club in New York. So I picked up on that pretty early on and just focused on the 6 people that understood what I was saying. And I considered it a successful set.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. That's my philosophy in life. Whatever works. Push me in there to ask you, like, one-liners, like knock jokes. I don't like the knock jokes. To me, it's a bit...
No, but there are some comics that do that well, though.
Okay, I'm not going to knock them. Knock. No, knock the knock. Or, it's like, what do the mayonnaise say to the refrigerator? Close the door and dressing and stuff like that. But, you have to have, I think, you look at your audience, like my audience. This is my podcast, Good to Talk. My guest is Eric. He's a stand-up comedian. Visualize my audience to be somewhat intelligent. And maybe I'm over-optimistic on that one. And they are, because they do give me feedback and they do correct me. And believe me, I need to be corrected sometimes. The longer jokes, not too long, of course, because you have an attention span. Not too short, because, they might get it and mightn't get it.
I can interrupt. I'm sort of in between the knock joke and the storytelling. I usually have a bit that'll have a few punchlines peppered throughout, usually ending in one big punchline.
Okay.
Know some comics that have long-winded stories that will maybe have a punchline, but it takes a couple of minutes to get to the one funny line.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess you have to evaluate your audience and say, it's like you mentioned the German tourist and her son, and the young 15-year-old German boy was more alert to your sense of humor or your comic skills than his mother. And he got it and she didn't get it. But maybe when they went home that evening back to the hotel, he explained the joke to her. And then they felt really good. And they go back to Germany and say, we were in America, we were in New York, and we met Eric, a comedian, and he was delightful. So you do give something away.
I think they said that. Maybe they didn't remember me so much, but the funny little bald guy.
Eric, you're unforgettable, okay?
No, well, but one thing you said about evaluating the audience, I have one, and I have a lot of, pretty liberal guy, but I have some politically incorrect humor. And I have a racist joke that I use that the one time I made a mistake by using it, I used it in Connecticut with a lily white audience, and they were afraid to laugh. And I used this joke in a mixed audience and a mostly black audience and got laughs because it's an absurd racist joke. And when I did it, like I said, in Connecticut, it was like these uptight people were looking at each other, and I was a relatively new comic at the time. Now I would laugh. I would kind of make fun of the crowd for being afraid to laugh, but at the time I was put off and not realizing that wasn't the appropriate crowd to make it. Ironically, the all-white crowd was the wrong crowd to make that joke to.
It happens. I mean, I've been in Harlem since the age of 16, and I love black humor. I mean, humor with friends of mine that are black. They do have a sense of humor, and they can laugh at themselves. So I'm able to tell a racist joke, even though I have to look around myself and make sure that's appropriate. But
I'm sorry,
black humor is good.
Well,
I mean, all humor is good, okay?
I agree, but then there's also, I've seen other comics and a couple of famous comics, I don't want to mention any names, that use racial humor, and there's a little bit of an edge to it, and then where it seems like it's coming from the wrong place.
Right.
That I don't really have time for that. I've seen that with like ethnic humor, like gay humor, and if it comes from the wrong place, it's not right.
I love people, obviously, because otherwise I would be doing a podcast, and you're a good guest. Is like people like, say, for example, Sarah Silverman, like yourself. She's Jewish, but she's able to make brilliant jokes about, the Jewish characteristics.
About Jewish, I'm sorry?
Sarah Silverman, she's a Jewish stand-up comedian.
Yeah, we spoke about her when I met you.
Yes, I like her a lot because, number one, I'm Irish, of course, and there's a similarity between a Jewish mother and an Irish mother.
Absolutely.
Like, they're the same. It's like if my mother saw me today, say, "Oh, John, you didn't comb your hair," A Jewish mother, well, not your problem, of course. A Jewish mother would say, "Oh, Eric, you didn't comb your hair. What's wrong with you?" And it's just, I suppose, a typical mother being a typical mother, whether it's a Jewish mother or an Irish mother. And I'm like, I'm an old fucking man. You don't have to tell me how to fucking comb my hair, And my mother said, "Come on, comb your hair, So Sarah Silverman is able to do that. Another joke she has is about, which is, I guess, slightly on the edge, is about Jewish people buying cars. They love to buy a BMW. They love to buy a Mercedes, to show off a bit of money. And yet they forget the Holocaust, I know that's a bit rough. But let's continue on that same vein of black humor. Okay, dark humor, okay?
What about dark?
Well, like dark humor is like...
Oh, like you're making fun of dead people and
yeah,
other subjects like that? Well,
yeah.
It's funny. There was a comedian, I won't mention his name, who used to produce a lot of shows, and very nice guy, but I didn't find him especially funny. But he had one line that was great, and it was actually before the actor had died. But he talked about he learned all he needed to know from Patrick Swayze in the movie Roadhouse. He says, "Nobody ever wins a fight." And then he said, "Especially against pancreatic cancer."
Actually,
I love that line.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Patrick Swayze's family would like it so much, but but that said, I would like a joke like that when I die. Jokes like that should be made about me.
Absolutely, and jokes, it should be on my epitaph, actually. But Sarah, getting back to Sarah Silverman, her parents, her father and mother, they died only a couple of months apart, and she was able to make good humor out of both of them, and they were extremely up to their dying moment. Were able to laugh with her and talk with her, and humor like that. Guess you won't beat this. But continue, Eric.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that about. To me, I have a good friend of mine who I perform with many times. She's friends with me and my wife. She's one of my best friends. And when bad things happen in her life, she doesn't like to perform. And to me, comedy is therapy. When bad things happen in my life, I want to perform. When I got cancer, it made me want to perform. More recently, in the last few years, my wife, it's not quite as traumatic as cancer. Well, in some ways, it may be more traumatic than cancer. My wife, as she put it, was a woman of a certain age, went through menopause, and that gave me a whole bunch of material.
Funny.
And she loved it too, because there's no such thing as bad publicity to some
no.
people.
Well, I've just gotten over my own menopause. It's menopause, which means men pause and whatever. That's a bad joke. But in terms of political jokes, like there's a lot of politics going on in the world right now, and definitely if you need material, you should perform in the White House. Okay, there's a quotation comes from Turkey. When the clown walks into the palace, he doesn't become the king, but the palace becomes the circus. So, you might get a gig there,
Well, don't get too political on stage usually, because mostly in New York, most people agree with me. And otherwise, you don't want to, you want to take chances, but you don't want to offend half the audience. However, a lot of what's going on in our society kind of, writes the materials, it's almost too easy. And the one time, I think I told you when I met you, I performed once in Ireland, in Dublin. It was 2017. And I won the crowd over right away when I apologized for our president, except for the two people who were in the crowd from Long Island. They didn't appreciate that line. Everybody else in the crowd loved it.
In my eyes, you're a winner, okay?
Oh, well, thank you. You too. Right back at you.
Right. Okay. But let's see what we didn't cover. I think we covered most of it, to be quite honest. But there's a lot going on in the world, and it's important for people to, you said it yourself, like to laugh is therapy. To talk is therapy.
Well, also, I feel like for me, performing is therapy. It's, I guess, instead of talking to one person, I'm talking to a bunch of people.
A
lot of people, but sometimes only a few.
Indeed. Like I talk to my sister almost every day, and it's like therapy. And then sometimes after talking to her, I feel like I need therapy, Anyways.
It's funny you say that. I have a similar thing. My sister lives in Florida near my elderly mother, and she's the one that has to deal with her most of the time. So she calls me and complains, and I feel like, and we both complain about my mother right now. I love my mother, don't get me wrong, but she's a lot of work. But I feel like I have to let my sister vent because she's dealing with her on a daily basis.
That's good advice. I'm glad you told me that. I like the way you say that. That's good advice for me, because I interrupt a lot, even on a podcast, interrupt a lot. But that's good advice. Next time my sister is talking to me, I'll let her vent, as you say. I like the word too. So venting, it's like turn on your air conditioner. So Eric, you are my guest today on It's Good to Talk. If people like this podcast, they should subscribe because it's free to subscribe. And I always have a guest on every week. Next week will be woodwork craftsman. Interesting. Not too funny. Not as funny as Eric, of course, but interesting.
Who is, though?
Well, there you go. It's good to laugh, Eric. Eric, it's been a real pleasure having you as a guest on my podcast. It's Good to Talk. I want to say slán.
Well, thank you for having me, John.